on, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
Octane is the black sheep of the Seekers, so logically he'd be the black sheep of toys. He's the only one in Legacy who hasn't gotten a redo since Time Return, and third party tends to mostly ignore him. I mean, he's got a KFC version, he's got a unique toys version, but that's about it. He's just not as popular as Astro Train and Blitzwing. Maybe that's down to the vehicle modes, maybe that's down to the color scheme. He's just not as popular. But he just doesn't have the same fandom pull, it's just not there. That doesn't mean you can't do brilliant things with him though. That doesn't mean you can't go amazingly. It's just unfortunately for the MechFansToys trio, I don't really think they did. Out of the 3 triple changes under MechFansToys, well, at least the 3 in this trio, Octane is by far the jankiest. And I think a lot of that comes down to the character itself. Octane isn't the most popular of the 3. It's always Astro Train and Blitzwing that get the most love. I think because Octane came out later. And because of that, Octane hasn't had a lot of toys. I mean, there was the lovely Deluxe, which I love, but a lot of people don't. And then there was a Times Return version, which many people just focus on the Optimus Prime for. That, or they just use it as a stand-in until the Legacy one comes out eventually, or I guess Age of Primes at this point, or whatever toy line it'll eventually come out in. And there's the various third-party Masterpiece ones. I mean, I have the Unique Toys version, Provider I think it is. But as a result, there's not a lot of history you can look at, not a lot of figures you can go and say, oh, I'll just use that as an idea. There's the basic G1 concept and a few pieces here and there, but for the most part, you're going in blind. And for going in blind, it's still pretty good, but it's definitely the jankiest of the 3. The front section is okay, but there's a lot of parts on show here that don't always work. Front section disguises the hinges as canisters, which I think is a pretty cool effect, and it helps box in the grille pretty well, but it still looks pretty messy with all the panels here, especially the fin that goes through the middle. There's just no way that's blending in. It's not hateful, it helps break up the windows in the middle, but it's still a bit iffy. The side windows also get cut a bit weird. I mean, it's a Legends figure, so what you're gonna do, but still. The back section is okay, but I feel it really would have benefited from some better paint. There's no real paint on the side here, no real paint on the top, no real sculpting on the top. A lot more sculpting could help this come to life better as well. The only real paint you've got is the silver on the side with the smokestacks and the grate over there. I don't know if it's a grate, I don't know if it's a stabilizer, I don't know what it is, but it's not that great. Pun not intended there. That means all of the attention is drawn to the wings here, which don't align given the transformation. Maybe there was a better way to do it, maybe there was a better way to disguise the wing details. I mean, the hinge here is pretty good, that's a pretty nice detail, but aside from that, it's not really ideal. I do like the way the windows make sort of windows at the back there, that's a pretty nice effect. And technically they even open for some play function, but you only really see the nose cone back there, so there's no real point for that. But yeah, it's not bad, it just definitely could be better. One thing I think should be better, one genuine criticism, is the arms do like to untab a lot. There's nothing really wrong with it, they don't really do anything wrong per se. If they come untabbed, they sort of still sit there, given the ball joints are pretty sturdy. But in general, it just could be a lot better. Maybe if the feet had also tabbed in here, or maybe if there was something in the middle there to help store it. They could have used some weapon storage to help solidify it, but unfortunately not. I have lost the weapon for this as well. The only weapons I still have go with Blitzwing. And if you don't actually do the thing from the cartoon, he can sort of do it with the head poking out of there. Fun little feature, it's there if you want to. The spare heads, I've unfortunately lost, but what can you do? I've had these figures for very long, and I've moved house, so unfortunately they are at the previous location, probably somewhere in a box. You win some, you lose a lot. Now, for comparisons to the official versions, I'm unfortunately gonna have to make a compromise. I don't actually own Times Return Octane, so I'm just gonna have to use one of the mold mates. Just take one of these. I'll just use Tokyo Toy Show Scourge for an example, I guess. Just because he's pretty. Or Black Convoy. I think Scourge works a bit easier for me. And honestly, I think he might be my least favorite of the 3 molds. Not because of the messiness, but just because the others have way more style. The Deluxe is far messier, it does far weirder things, but consequently it just comes across as more interesting. Now, I did add toy hacks to it, so it does look a bit better. But even before then, the point kind of still stands. And the Times Return version, well, I've always loved it. I've always thought this mold was very lovely. So yeah, I think although it's a pretty serviceable alt mode, I think I prefer the other 2, the official Hasbro ones, a bit better. Again, not bad, just not as good as it could have been. And here we have the full trio together, and in terms of vehicle modes, I gotta give it to Astro Train. He's just the most fun, the chunkiest. He has the least play value of the 3, but I just really like him. I mean, look at those colors, they are just divine. Anywho, size-wise, he is 12.8 centimeters by 4 centimeters by 3.5 centimeters. And for size comparisons, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard core class figure, a standard modern Micromaster, a standard modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and Crumbs. Octane is the most interesting of the triple changes in his conversion, at least of these three MechFansToys ones. I haven't handled the G1 toy, so I don't know if it's G1 accurate or anything, but it does the most. It takes the most risks. And for jet mode, it mostly pulls it all off. First thing you want to do is untab the wings from the sides here. These panels fold down like so. This section rotates upwards. Make sure these aren't coming with the rest of it. They're supposed to untab from the sides there. They're tight when they want to transform, but loose when they want to be in vehicle mode. Separate the legs so that we can transform it a bit easier. Bring out these parts here. Bring the legs out and rotate this section up. Without separating the legs, these won't have enough clearance. Then you can bring these around and we'll deal with those momentarily. First, you want to bring these side parts up and out of the way. This section comes down and around and back. Transforms like so, with the fin on the double hinge. And then these side parts will come around and each peg into the side. I haven't really seen this on an Octane before. It's an interesting way of doing it. I'm not sure if it really works, but on a Legends figure, I don't see what else they could have done. Bring this together. Then you collapse everything together here. You need to have the wheels rotated here and have these rotated like that. So you've got the tab and the slot here. So it should look like that. You can then bring everything together like so. The feet collapse underneath. It's a bit hard to get everything together, but once it's there, it's nice and solid. And now the rest is pretty simple. These basically sit here along the sides with this panel going over the top. In it goes. There we go. The shoulder kibble pegs in and the wrists peg in. Bringing everything together. It is a very complex transformation for a Legends figure. I mean, New Age technically does more complex, but this, you really feel the complexity. In fact, at times it can get a little bit overbearing. I don't know if it entirely works, but I kind of dig it. I kind of vibe with it. Even if it's not entirely successful, it's a transformation I definitely remember. This is probably the weakest of the three aerial modes that MechFansToys has done in this set. Is it a set? They've done other triple changes, but I'd say it's a set, and I'd say this is the weakest. It is okay, though. It does some really interesting things. I love the way the arms become the turbines, and the way that the truck cab splits off into this whole section at the back is really interesting. There's a lot about this that is really interesting, but it's clear this wasn't the priority. It's got the most jank out of the three, and it can really go either way when you're doing a triple changer, but in this case, they chose the jet to compromise on. Like, the front looks alright, but then you've got these side panels, and it ends up looking a bit weird. These side panels don't seem connected with the rest of the nose cone, and that is unfortunate, but it's understandable. I do like that they've got these nice windows on the side, but that's really the only detail on the rest of the body. Much like the rest of the truck, it could have used some more detail and greebling on the top. Now, I know that jets aren't supposed to have greebling like that on it, but that would have been a good way to distract from all of this paneling at the top here. I don't really hate the paneling at the top here, but it is a criticism that you need to take into account. The wings don't also lock in. They kind of just sit around and sit there. It would have been nice if there was a locking mechanism, but it's okay. Biggest gripe, though, is easily the back section. Although I do like what they've done, it doesn't actually tab in, so over time that might become loose. And the back section, yeah, it's pretty messy, but honestly, it's fine. Legends figure, triple changer, yada yada yada. What are you really going to do at this point? It's not a masterpiece figure. You can't really take it by the same criticisms. The only thing I'd really change is get rid of that hollow section at the back here. If it wasn't as hollow back there, you know, hello, you can see my finger going through there, it would have been a lot better, but, you know, we have what we have. Also, maybe the wings could be a bit bigger, but it's fine. It's not the best of the three modes with this figure, and it's certainly not the best of the three aerial modes throughout the set, but it functions. If you want a Legend scale Octane, this will do you just fine. It's also reasonably clean from the underside, which, you know, is the thing, I guess. Although, who's gonna display their figures from the underside? It's a bit silly. Now, compared to the two official ones, is he the best? Well, I would say I prefer it to the Time to Turn version. I do really like this vehicle mode, but I think this pulls off the plane better. But that's technically not even an Octane anyway, so I'm not really sure if it counts. Again, don't own Octane, but let's compare these two at least. Honestly, I think the Deluxe does it better. It's funny how it technically uses a similar transformation, just with folding out instead, but I just feel the stylization and the way everything folds together is just a lot more fun, and it's just a lot more dynamic, and the jet mode's just a lot lovelier. Again, this does have toy hacks, but even in its stock configuration, I still think it's better than this. Just as a preference thing, I do like both. In fact, I like all three, but yeah, just the way I feel. And out of the three, honestly, my favorite would have to be Blitzwing. Astro Train is lovely, he's luscious, he's chunky. And Octane is weird and experimental and wacky, and I appreciate him for that. I appreciate all of them for different things. But I feel that Blitzwing does the experimentation and the chunkiness and lusciousness better than both of them. He's just a fantastic Blitzwing in jet mode anyway. What can I say? I just dig him. Technically he's a bit bigger than Blitzwing, but he doesn't feel it, I guess, because of the proportions. He's 15 centimeters long and 16 centimeters wide. I guess with how small the windows are, he doesn't feel that much bigger. Anyway, comparisons-wise, standard Legion figure, standard core class, standard modern Micromaster, standard modern Minicon, not so standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs. Fortunately, the transformation to robot mode is a lot easier than the transformation between vehicle modes. It's a little more standard, it's got a lot less of that interesting engineering in it, but it's a more enjoyable experience. Untab the wings from the arms. They will basically sit here. It's better to tab them in at the end later because otherwise they'll just come untabbed when you move everything. Bring the legs all the way out so that we get everything out of the way. Rotate back into truck configuration so that we can get the legs working, just like so. And then the feet will come into place, rotate around, and that will allow you to get the feet working, just like so. Truck cab transforms back into its cab configuration, like so. Then it will basically rotate into place. The head cavity comes out into place, and that will allow you to push everything in there to create the G1 torso. The arms rotate back like so, rotate everything into place, get the fists out like so. It's gonna do hell on my nails, but whatever. Doobly-doo, there we go. And last but not least, you've got pegs here that go in the slots here. The reason I did this last is not just because the head gets in the way, but just because it'll keep coming undone whenever you transform it. Do the backpack stuff last. It's just a better way to do it. So yeah, much simpler when compared to going between both modes, but you know, not terrible. Just a nice little Legends transformation. Nice and simple. And the robot mode, I guess, is fine. He's probably a bit better than Blitzwing, but he's easily the most boring out of the bunch. I guess a good chunk of that comes down to him being based heavily on the screen model, and the toy model is a lot more visually interesting than the screen model, so it might just be a preference thing for me. But just in general, there's not a lot going for this design. Really, you got a big cube of a truck in the chest, purple arms, sort of okay legs here. It is very clean. There is no kibble on show whatsoever. The wings are purposeful and you got the wheels at the back, but that's about it. One thing you cannot accuse this figure of is having issues with the kibble. They handle this very well. It's just, this isn't a particularly interesting design. That's the only thing. The head is rather nice. I mean, it's certainly nicer than Unique Toys provider, but all the heads in this line have been pretty good at the very least. MechFansToys knows how to make decent head sculpts, so that's pretty fine. The paint is very minimal. You've got some on the wings and then the rest from the vehicle mode, and that's about it. Nothing on the midriff, nothing on the legs, nothing on the arms to break anything up, and I think that kind of contributes to this guy just being okay. He's a good finisher for the trio, but he's probably the most boring. The articulation, it's technically all there, but a lot of it just doesn't work due to the tolerances. Like, technically it's not bad, it's all here, but they make some really weird choices. You got the ball-jointed head sculpt, ball-jointed shoulders that don't have any impediment except towards the back, but you got the wings there, so it doesn't matter. Really tight bicep swivels, not as bad as, say, DNA Design Wheelie. The transformation also gives you access to a butterfly joint, which can be used if you really want to. 90-degree elbow and nothing in the wrist. Waist swivel works, but this butt flap is separate from it, so you have to push that up first. Bit annoying, but not as annoying as Blitzwing. Monoskirt again, and for some reason it doesn't actually get up, it just gets stuck. You see right there, it just falls off. That is really annoying, so you don't get much forward motion at all. Just mostly out to the side and still impeded and towards the back. Like, if this skirt could properly move, that would be great, but there's just no sculpting in there to allow it to. That's not cool. Really tight thigh swivels. Yeah, the tolerances aren't the best. And then the knees, you kind of get 45 there, or you get 90. There's no smooth motion. It's just a really weird choice. And then you also have the ankle tilt here, but you can also use the entire foot to get extra movement. It's just weird that you got two of them. Also, there's no heel spurs, so he can fall back pretty easily. That's a bit of a downside. I don't know, it's just, he's not the kind of guy that you can get a lot of poses from, despite the fact that there are a lot of joints in here that should function. Hypothetically, this should all work, but it just doesn't really. And I think that's a good way to discuss this figure overall. There's a lot that should function with this figure, but unfortunately it just doesn't. They took a lot of risks in the engineering and it just didn't pay off with the rest. In fact, in some ways, he actually feels sort of rushed, like they didn't really cook him that much. Like they were just finally getting over the trio and they just needed to shit something out at the very end. I don't want to make it sound like this is a bad figure. It's okay. It's not bad. It's just, it's not on the same level as the other two. Now, for comparisons with the official versions, I'm just gonna get rid of that because that is way retooled now compared to the
actual Octane version. Just bring these across. This one's a tough one. I don't think I can really pick one or the other. This one's a lot jankier, but I kind of prefer the colors on it a lot more. But this version is just safer and a bit blander, so I don't really know which one to pick. This one has the better head sculpt, but this one has the nicer colors. Honestly, I don't think we've gotten an Octane that really does the character justice yet, and I'm still holding out for one in Age of Primes or whatever happens in the future. So I'm just gonna call it a tie here. I can't control the future, I'll just have to see what happens when, and hope that we get a better one, better than both of these. Again, not a bad figure, just underwhelming. And this one is janky but lovely, so they're both different things. And as for which of the three I think is my favorite, honestly, I'm gonna have to give it to Astrotrain. As much as he plays it safer than these two, he's just the best all around. It's not a case of them peaking too early, because there's a lot about Blitzwing that I think they do better than Astrotrain, especially in the vehicle modes. But the overall experience, I think, just goes to Astrotrain in general. And Octane definitely feels on a slightly lower level than the other two. None of these are bad, it's just we've got one fantastic, one slightly below fantastic because of the robot mode, and one that's decent. Decent doesn't mean bad, decent means decent. I know a lot of people see me call something decent and then say I'm shitting on it. That is not what I'm saying. It's just, this figure has problems that we can't ignore, and these ones excel in ways this doesn't. And that's okay, if you want to get all three of them, it's a very good set. Of course, if you also want to wait for New Age or Magic Square to do it, you can do that also, but you don't have to wait if you don't want to. These are perfectly adequate. In fact, two of them are more than adequate. It's just, I'd be lying by omission if I didn't compare them. If I didn't go into the reasons why I think that Octane is weaker than these two. But you know, up to you. You collect how you want to collect, and if these are up your alley, then, well, you now have all the information you need. Anywho, size-wise, is roughly 12.8 centimeters by 14 centimeters. And for a size comparison, here he is next to a standard Legion figure, a standard Core Class figure, a standard Modern Micromaster, a standard Modern Minicon, a not-so-standard Lego minifigure, and crumbs.
I know Octane can be done absolutely wonderfully. I've experienced the Unique Toys version. I mean, I own the Unique Toys version, so of course I'd experience it. But I know they can do truly wonderful things with it. And this ain't that. This is a fill-in for a trio that's already pretty good, and this is the weakest one. It's not bad, it is fine, but if you're not getting the other two, you don't really need this one. If you're looking for a genuinely brilliant Octane, this isn't going to give you that experience. Maybe New Age will one day. I mean, eventually they'll get around to triple changes, right? They can't just not do them. This one just doesn't have that pizzazz, and that's okay. Not every figure has to. It's just, I was really hoping this trilogy would be a slam dunk. And it's not. There is one figure that is a little disappointing. But that's still okay. I still really like this trio. I'm still very glad I got it. It's just that out of the three, this is the weakest. And it is still fine, but it's just okay. And with that, I think enough time has passed, so why don't we do another full review again? This one's pretty funny because it's a character I've covered before, but I didn't think it would be possible to be worse than the one I covered. When certain companies come back, you expect them to be as good as they always were, but that's not always the case. So with that, see y'all tomorrow!